broadcasting a new paradigm on the One Network.
At this pivotal time of humanity's evolution, we are beginning to remember our organic technology. A technology, when used correctly, can create an experience that the majority of the people the world over want to live. It is time to use this technology consciously for our own benefit and healing, and no longer unconsciously for our own demise. We are multi-dimensional creators, creating both our own personal experience and our collective experience moment to moment. We invite you to join us as we reawaken this technology through experiment and experience our power to create and manifest.
Hello and welcome everyone to this week's Collective Imagination Show. If there's anybody out there in the chat room at the website, if you could let us know if you can hear us, that would be awesome. Can you hear us in the chat room? Yes, we can. Awesome.
Oh,
it's working.
It's working.
Yay!
Live broadcast. Yes.
Hi Lisa. Hi guest 764. You'll have to let me know who it is.
Maybe that's their name.
And we sound okay?
No comment.
There's a delay. That's probably yes. Oh, wonderful.
There we go.
Well, welcome to our first attempt at a live broadcast from one donkey town, Houston, in Morocco.
We have 4 donkeys, don't we?
Receiving live down under in Adelaide. Oh, beautiful. Thank you, Grant. Nice to see you there. Wow. Say hi, Dee.
Hi, Dee.
You said to say that. That's so new.
Hi, everyone. She set me up. I couldn't resist.
Say hi, Pixel.
Hi, everyone. It is great to finally have the first actual live interact with everyone in the chat room show.
This is going to take some getting used to. I know it's live, but I'm still getting used to it. This new platform. Big shout out to American Kabuki for letting us use his family room.
Yay! Yay! And is it the cat?
A nice change of scenery. Now we have a different white wall. It might look the same as the one from our living room, but trust me, I assure you it's
totally different.
So we aren't going to try and take calls today because that may just overwhelm the internet. There is the chat room, so you can, if you're anywhere near your computer, you can go to the chat room at the One Network website or at our Mixler page. There's another chat room, which I should bring up actually. I should go there and have a look. And interact with us there. That would be fun. And there's a kitten that's... Okay.
Pardon, we're being attacked. You can't see it, but we're actually being attacked by the cat, who is insisting on chewing on all our sleeves and trying to just bungee jump off my braids.
I think that cat had daddy issues as a child.
Alright, I'm just going to see if I can find our see if there's anybody hanging out in there.
Guess.
Okay. So, oh, what?
I'm just looking to see who's on. I just got flashes of names.
Oh, no poser. Hi, Mark, if you're listening. So the last couple of shows have been interviews with Lily, and the information that she has brought forward has caused quite a stir. And but mostly positive. You know, people have really connected with a lot of what she's had to say, and at the same time, a lot's gone over everybody's head.
Mm.
And one of the things we've been focused on is, for me anyway, is kind of piecing together all of the information that, even going back to everybody I've interviewed and seeing, does this contribute to a fuller picture of what we're doing here and how we got here and who we are and what's going on. And, oh, just lost audio. It's the bottom one.
Can you hear us? Please tell us.
See, now this is starting to feel like a regular show.
Yeah.
Can you hear us? Wait, are we live? No, we're not. Are you?
If you do lose audio, I would try just refreshing your page. Although Mixler is telling us our bandwidth is very low. So if anybody's on the internet in here and doesn't need to be, that'd be great if you got it.
Is my phone,
Derek, is your phone on?
it's connected, should it's
no.
not.
Okay. Seconds.
Okay.
Alright,
Can you please give us a link to Lily's YouTube videos?
Yeah.
Actually, I don't have permission to share them, but to be honest with you, the content of them,
Was well covered in all the shows.
yeah, we went over everything that was covered in them. She basically just outlined exactly what we talked about.
Those pictures were pretty much what she was working with.
Yeah.
Yes,
Also,
yeah.
those pictures. The pictures that you got, that were posted on the website, were better quality pictures than
What was in the
what
videos?
was in the videos. They were kind of hand-drawn scribblings.
Yeah.
And we covered all of the information. So on the one hand, it's kind of pointless, but on the other, I don't have permission to share them. So can't do that just yet.
And they were, to be quite frank, the videos were very difficult to listen through too, because she was speaking to a specific group of people when she recorded them, so they were geared to people who there's an assumption that they already have background knowledge from previous conversations. It kind of jumps into
There was no real context given as
No,
far
there was
as
no
what-
context, and that context was discovered on the first show when we talked to her quite thoroughly. So I think it makes much more sense to just listen to the show again.
The other thing that, from what I'm getting with feedback, is people are really looking into the Wingmakers as well, because we brought that up again. And then the whole controversy over old site, new site, original information, tampered information.
Did you get the link I sent you this
Yeah,
morning?
that's one of the things I have been reading over the last week, is all of the...
What was it?
All the information on Wes Penray's website,
Yeah.
as well as the website that he refers to, which I discovered first,
Right.
the Burke one.
Yeah.
Someone actually did put a link to one of the shows with Lily on the comments on the page on the website that has a link there for a website called Want to Know.
Want to know.info.
Want to
Want to
know
know.info.
Yeah.
Isn't that Wes's site?
No, that's not Wes.
No.
He
Someone else.
does link to it.
Okay, that's what it was.
And the guy behind Want to Know is someone who came across the Wingmakers material back in 2000, copied the entire contents of the website for future study, and then over the course of 2000-2001, after he'd done that, noticed the changes that were starting to happen. And the flavour is a lot different. And the biggest variance shock for me.
It's the dates.
No. Was
No,
actually the
essential
fact that
race.
central race wasn't even mentioned in the original material.
Yeah.
Oh,
Not once.
And it's mentioned all throughout almost all of the interviews.
Yeah.
Central race.
And who essentially the Wingmakers are. Apparently in the original material, the Wingmakers are humans from the year 2750 who mastered time travel, came back here, planted all this stuff.
Right.
Nothing to do with
Central
races, galactic races, anything. They were simply us from the future. And Neruda / Anderson was speculating that it might have even been some sort of future incarnation of the Labyrinth group itself. And that's how they knew how to
where to go, how to
well,
plant it, etc.
Did they speculate as to who was manipulating the information and for what reason?
Wes Penray does. He believes that it's actually one of the Courtier.
But the site that I sent, and I didn't get a chance to review it at all this morning, I scanned through just the first page of it, and the one thing the guy said is, yes, the Wingmakers document is absolutely, is for real, but there are agencies who are manipulating. So
Which document? Because there's
all of it. The original stuff.
The original stuff was manipulated because there were certain agencies involved, and he gives a list of some of the agencies. NSA is one of them. So that's the changes. That would account for a lot of the changes. Now, the one thing I said to you when we were talking about it, the whole thing with the dates, I haven't had a chance to look into it yet, but I really want to see why they changed that supposed year from
that it was discovered.
Did you go from 72
to
was it 96 or 98?
98.
98. And the reason I said to you, the first thing that pops into my mind is 98 is the last time the global financial system was remirrored. That was a major happening.
Well, hang on. Also, I think the original interviews was supposedly done in '97.
So how could it have been 98?
So how could they have discovered the site in '98?
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Did
No.
you go through the stuff that Wes did? He highlighted what the changes that were added to the new material, and then he highlighted what was different from the old material, so you could compare.
I wanted to do I've been
And it's a lot of
the last few days, so.
from what I read, it's a lot of date manipulation. That was one of the bigger ones, and the subtleties of the language that they use. Why would they change that? And then you start to look and you go, oh. And it's been a while since I actually read the Wes Penray stuff. I read that in the beginning when we discovered it. But I would suggest anybody that wants to go down the Wingmakers rabbit hole to read the Ancient Arrow Project. Just Google it. There's a free PDF. That's it's hard to navigate through the material because you don't know what is legit and what's not. But it's still.
Well, even in the I'm going with Wes Penray's speculation that even in the original material, Dr. Anderson probably gave some disinformation just to protect certain people.
Sure, absolutely.
So maybe at best that's like 80–90% accurate. But the changes that were really noticeable to me that do completely undermine the whole project is no talk of hierarchy, whereas there's a lot of talk of hierarchy in the second one.
Very much so.
The revised version. Well, apparently the first ones were all about going within. Stopping any seeking.
Getting out of the saviorship model.
Getting out of the saviorship model.
Yes.
And that also.
That's why I resonated with it
nothing
so
to do with the defence, but these 7 sites have absolutely nothing to do with a defence weapon. There's not even much talk of this so-called synthetic race who want to come and right? None of this had any military application whatsoever. Or the new material, it's all about that. It's all about it's a military bases designed to defend us from a synthetic invasion.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And this is when you said that, it doesn't matter.
But worth looking into. I mean, I think there's a lot there that I do really connect with.
Well, the whole thing is, like we say, everything you read, everything you come across, every video you watch, doesn't mean you have to swallow it whole and just be, okay, I'm reading the Wingmakers document, so I have to take the whole. No, well, that's just it. Sometimes you read it and it can be just one sentence that has a huge relevance to you that makes you have one of those moments of like, So read the document, see what resonates. If it doesn't resonate, check it out. Make sure file it for future, something to go back and look at, because you never know when another piece of information comes out that brings that and makes that relevant.
Yeah.
Right?
I used to swallow
the Lily Earth stuff.
Yeah, I think we all, a lot of us anyways, and a lot of people listening to the shows, they used to probably swallow a lot of the channelings they read whole. And after that, you know, I think that for me, especially bringing light some of what Lily was saying in the first talk that we did with her, saying about how virtually all channel material is coming from the astral and being very much manipulated. And you look back and you start to scrutinize a lot of the messages that were coming out, all making very detailed proclamations as far as what was going to happen on December 21st, 2012. And I realized, wow, man, I was just spoon-feeding that shit up. All of it, hook, line, and sinker. And now I think that as a result of that, I have this largely skeptical nature. And I think that I went into that first talk with Lily, and I think a lot of people, from the feedback that I've got, everyone's like, well, the first hour was just so hard to listen to. And then by the second hour,
they were like, oh,
when it started kind of clicking for us, you
yeah,
know, I think it started clicking for other people too. And it's so important not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Because if I can get those little pieces, you know, this whole, I mean, alternative media is about putting the pieces together. Because if we swallow down everything that's fed to us, well, we live in a world full of illusion, and full of lies, and full of secrecy, and full of deception. So it's important to be able to kind of have an open mind and feel out what resonates. Because I don't, you know, at this point I don't claim to understand the whole picture, and I know that the data that I need when I need it will always appear.
yeah. Well, I wanted to touch back on the whole channel messages thing, and I was writing about this earlier last week. There's a very distinct flavor now, if you will, in these so-called channeled messages that are coming out at the moment. And you have those that are your, the traditional, like you were talking about, those kind of channeled messages have a very distinct feel to them now, versus the messages that we get from, say, Ed, from sites like Gaia Portal, lately Aisha North, the Truth Codes, where there's stuff that's coming out and it feels different. You feel, and this is stuff that people are reading this, whether you want to higher self, inner consciousness, whatever, and they're getting the information real time, right off the energetic grid. Yeah. But you can feel it, and when you read it, there's a huge difference in flavor between that stuff that seems to be coming from those kind of purported astral realms of your Ashtar and your Saint Germain, Archangel Michael, all that kind of stuff.
For me, there's a whole different tone from Archangel Michael and Bashar.
Yeah.
You know, with Bashar, you know, that's where I kind of still am trying to kind of figure out how to navigate the terrain. Because I really resonate with some of the stuff that Cryon says. And virtually almost all of what comes out through Bashar, I just love. And I think that because it doesn't continue to feed this concept of hierarchy, and it doesn't represent anything that should be worshipped. It feels like more like this deep wisdom than it does advice or prediction or prophecy.
Being saved from an external source.
Yeah, it's like the difference between Sheldon Neidl. You know, you read Sheldon Neidl. I used to love Sheldon Neidl. I used to watch his videos that he would put out, the PowerPoint presentations. I read his book. I think I gave his book to Bill, actually. I don't know if you ever read his book or not, but you know, we are your ascended masters. You know, it's just like it's like I threw up in my mouth a little bit.
But here's the thing, and I can only give my perspective on this one. I follow Sheldon Neidl, and have done for quite a while, because one of my very high up sources within the Pentagon said to me, listen to Sheldon, because he's getting his information direct. So you don't look at it.
Military? Or
from the Faction 3 Palladians who are working with the Pentagon and working with these groups. And I was told by my military guys, listen to Sheldon, because it'll give you the scope of what their plans are. And it was the same thing. The same time, Heather got information from one of her very high-up government sources that said the same thing. If you read Sheldon, you are getting kind of a real-time what their plans are and what they're trying to do. And if you know how to read him, if you read him, you can see the changes that have been very subtle. And you can also see the temper tantrums that they've had, which is what 2 weeks ago, Heather and I very rarely read them anymore, but Heather said to me, you've got to read it today. And I read it and I just about pissed my pants, because there was one paragraph where they were obviously, literally having a temper tantrum, like, no, we will do this. We are going to do it. No, we're going to do it. Yeah, exactly. But the subtleties have changed. The words that he uses are changing. And it's like we talk about the consciousness, like he used eternal essence.
Oh no!
About 4 weeks ago. I was just like, holy crap, are you kidding me? And so, in that area, it's like, it's kind of fun. Read Sheldon. It gives you an idea of what they've been trying to do and that whole Texas camp and all the rest of it. So, it's kind of fun to watch.
Wait, do you want to say something?
I was going to say, this has been boiling since our first talk with Lily, I think I knew it, but it really kind of anchored in this whole concept of the New Age movement and the Lightworker movement being co-opted and being such a serious line and lane of control.
Isn't the fact that wasn't it Kissinger created the whole New Age movement?
Oh yeah.
That's common.
Well, this is
Henry Kissinger?
Yeah, he was one of the big guys who was, he saw the need. You see people breaking away from religion, breaking away. You've got to create a new construct. Well, so you create a New Age movement.
You got reaction to the whole 70s free love hippie movement.
If you
it was like, we're going to do
it.
something with these people because they're starting to think for themselves. They're taking psychoactive drugs. They're completely opening up. We're going to catch them.
We've got to catch them and put them in another clearly defined little box. And then
by the 80s, the New Age movement was really starting to take off.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the fastest growing category of books sold in Barnes & Noble worldwide.
Oh, it's huge.
New Age.
It's like you have New Age bookshelves in the big bookstores. It's like,
Cameron Day's article, I am no longer a light worker, really kind of brought a lot of that stuff to light. I remember, oh my gosh,
it was
one of the most
article.
popular blog posts I think I ever put out.
Same with me.
Was sharing that.
Yep.
So I just wanted to mention that because that really kind of painted that when I looked at first the whole percentage thing that she constantly was throwing out really kind of threw me through a loop. Why did precision down to the 100th% is it necessary? But in the sense of telling the story of how it breaks down of how many people fall within that 85% of control and mind programming. That those light workers that think that they're all exempt. I used to call myself a light worker and a light warrior. And now I go, ooh, dirty work.
Actually, it was the percentages that I wanted to touch on because, I don't know about you guys, but I've got a lot of feedback from people saying, thank you. I now know who really resonate with that concept of the 3%. And you and I were having a discussion today, which I think is fascinating.
It was one of those moments where we said we need to have a video camera because we sat there and we had this huge discussion and I was like, damn, we should have videotaped that. That would have been really good, unfortunately.
But you speculated that, but Dani speculated that the 3%, based on the description from Lily about how they're kind of the forgotten and neglected.
Talking about the Earthlings?
Yeah, might actually be the indigenous, the world over.
Right? Your all your First Nations and your Inuit, etc. They're the forgotten ones, right? They're the forgotten ones. They're the ones who have kind of been neglected. Well, look at it right now. Everywhere in the world, any indigenous group are pretty much the most neglected people on the planet. As far as they get very little attention.
And they're way outside of the controlling because they're outside of the media, they're outside of the school system, they're outside of the food system, they're outside of politics and government.
Yeah, and that was really interesting. That was kind of struck me as like, well, if you're going to talk about the ones who are closest to Earth, you know, the Earthlings, etc., and the ones, and the other thing is genetically, we've already proven, it's been proven scientifically, that the genome, the genetics of most of the First Nations groups are different than everyone else, different than your Anglo-Saxon Europeans, different than most of the Asians, different than a lot of these groups. Their genetics are different.
One of the things you said about the 3% is that they've got these gypsy spirits and they're kind of nomadic, and when you when you go back far enough into history before, you go back to the Australian history before the white people came,
and fucked it all up.
They were
Damn
very
Gringos.
nomadic. I mean, there were no real permanent structures.
No.
And they travelled around the country according to weather. I mean, they certainly had home base. They certainly had their land, their territory, their mob area. But there's also a lot of evidence that they were quite migratory. And same with the American Indians. They were all over the place.
They had trade routes that they followed, and they may have, at springtime during this planting season, they'd all go to their one planting area, but the rest of the time, that's the whole idea of a teepee, was that it could be collapsed down and dragged behind a horse.
So those of us who are not Indigenous, but feel very connected to the whole feeling of the 3% and the description of the 3%, does that make us that 10% who have taken on that planetary blueprint? Because it's not, you didn't talk about DNA, you talked about planetary blueprints and energetic blueprints, and that's what makes the 3% and the 10% on top of that.
I think what everybody wants to know is when are those percentages going to start swaying in our favor.
But it doesn't matter, it already has. That the 15% was actually more than enough that was needed.
Yeah. Exactly.
What did you say? We were more successful than expected.
More successful than expected.
And that's the message that's come out quite a bit over the last,
Yeah.
well, since December 2012.
Yeah.
Is that we raised our frequency beyond expectation, or whatever terminology you want to use. But
yet the galactics still haven't shown themselves.
Maybe us. We're still working on it. Just gotta, you're here. We need to get you there.
well, she had an answer for that too. Sorry, was he? Or something.
Yeah.
I didn't get this at the time that I was talking to her on the second show that you guys weren't there for.
Which I can fully and completely admit that I haven't listened to.
I tried.
What I think she was saying, I had to. Looks like they're messing up with the internet again. The buffering is just so bad now.
Oh no.
Oh guys, we're sorry.
We're trying. Really, we're trying.
Wait for the video.
Yes. Wait for the video. What was I saying?
I don't
I
know.
lost my train of thought. Why they have to turn up here. And I've heard this before, put in different words and given a slightly different take on it. But that if these astral levels, this astral net that she talks about, is 12 different frequencies that you have to resonate with one of in order to incarnate here. You have to actually resonate with one of them to even physically turn up here, not even incarnate, but just be on the planet. And that's why she said that if they aren't here, then, because I was talking about the Palladians and the Syrians and all these other races that people really, really connect with and feel they are definitely a part of, how to explain those races. And she said, well, if they're not here physically, then there's a very good chance that they're still a pure race, because they haven't been contaminated with these frequencies in order to get here. But if you're here, in whatever way, shape or form, whether you're incarnated, whether you've turned up, you kind of had to have
Like
ridden
as
on
an
those
example, the
frequencies.
Faction 3 Palladians as an example. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Who are here physically. Physically here. I've got several of my guys in the Pentagon who've worked with them, have met them. As I say, you go to a base that's
Underground.
in somewhere in the mountains of Asia, and there's all these tall blonde people walking around, in fatigues and everything, but they don't really fit in that well.
How tall?
Like well over 6 foot. Like, we have tall, slim, blonde-haired women who are like well over 6 foot tall.
Yeah. In the second interview that I'm reading right now, it says that the Quartium are 9 feet. 3 meters to 9 feet, right?
Yeah, about that.
3 meters.
6 to 9, because apparently somewhere in the original material it said 6 to 9, because James, who's the guy who claims to be behind the material, met up with, okay, I'm going to give the backstory. So Dr. Neruda/Anderson calls a reporter known as Anne/Sarah, depending on which version you're reading, and spends a week with her with a plan to have 5 interviews. From what I can understand from the original material, only 2 of those interviews took place. So where the information came for the other 3, I don't know. Sarah, who I guess couldn't put it out, she was a journalist working for a mainstream media outlet, couldn't put the information out through who she worked with. She sent it all in the post, or by courier, to a guy called Mark Hempel, who she knew of, or knew personally, I don't know, who had a website. He was a musician and an artist, and he knew how to get things online. Sent it to him and asked him to please make this stuff public. So he created a little website called Wingmakers and published the stuff.
Right.
He didn't know at the time where it came from. Sometime later, this guy called James contacts him and says, I'm the one who sent you the material. I need you to add some more, make some changes, and so the changes start. And it's Wes Penray's speculation that this James character is leader, one of the Cordian. Not necessarily the leader, but one of the Cordian. And at some point in time, the 2 of them met, quite a while after. And he said that would have been very interesting because in the original material, they are described as being anywhere from 6 to 9 feet tall. And he said, I wonder how that went down. He said it's possible he was one of the shortest one in the group, and that's why they sent him.
That's why they sent him. Look, you're 6'4". You'll pass. You'll be okay. We can find you pants in your size.
Yeah. We'll chalk you up as a high school basketball player.
So we're getting some links in here.
Yeah, someone's posted KP.
One of the things that I always thought was interesting was that when Dr. Neruda/Anderson, when he is telling his story, he says that it was revealed in the Ancient Era Project that he defected because he was chosen to bring the information out to the public, blah blah blah. But then he basically outs and unveils so much more. Maybe it's for context, maybe it's for credibility, maybe it's co-opted, I mean, all of this information about the ACIO and this 15 guy and the NSA involvement and all of this, it's almost like they gave him a job and he went way overboard in everything that he brought forward. And
no, not that, don't tell them that!
There's a comment in the first interview, the original version of the first interview, that had been completely eradicated from the revised version, which is that when the journalist asked him, why wasn't 15, why do you think it was you and not 15 that really connected with this material, or was that received the information? Because he claimed to have had a kind of telepathic communication.
Now you're going to have to give a background to who 15 is.
Yes.
15 is the head of, okay, so you've got the ASIO, which is a
Advanced Civilization.
It's a subgroup of the NSA.
Yes.
And it's kind of a little secret group in the NSA. 15 is the head of that.
They research all ET contact type of everything that's galactic in nature is ACIO, not NSA.
Not everybody in the NSA knows that this group exists, but even within that group, within the ASIO group, the leader of it, 15, formed his own little, very secret group within that called the Labyrinth group.
Okay.
And
now I
15
understand.
apparently was the first to undergo intelligent enhancement technologies and a few other technologically derived enhancements to the physical body that were given to by the Cordian.
Such as?
They refer to it as pure state technology, so it's like they give you, the technology allegedly enables a being to access much more of their brain capacity, essentially. Kind of like
Limitless, I was just going to say.
Yeah.
Truth in movies at the moment is getting kind of freaky.
Or Lucy.
Go watch
15,
the Lego movie. I just caught a little bit of that the other day. The kids watching it and I was just like, oh. can't believe they just said that.
15 is his security clearance. It only goes up to 15 as the director of the ACIO, which is the
He's the only one who's got that.
Advanced Civilization Intelligence Organization, I think is what it stands for.
So basically, the Labyrinth Group have got their own agenda, which is they're out to
Blank slate
create
technology.
what they call blank slate technology, which is a form of time travel. Because apparently, according to them, the only time travel they've been able to achieve so far is as an observer.
Yeah.
You can go back and view and witness, but you cannot participate in change.
Or manipulate.
Okay, now, was that not the same thing with Looking Glass? That they could view,
Yeah.
but they could not go back.
And change.
But they could view, and that was the use of the viewers.
But that's
Right.
different than the Montauk stuff.
Yeah.
What about Yellow Book as well?
Yellow Book's, I think, is similar to the Looking Glass.
Project
Yeah.
Yellow Book.
It's
But
just
again, they
viewer.
could just view, they couldn't, no, actually, hold on.
For the Montauk stuff, they did a,
There was one that they were going back and meddling with timelines, right? And that was Montauk, where they were physically going back, and that's why they were meddling with the Christ timeline over and over and over again. And there were several timelines that they went back and mucked around
Abraham
with
Lincoln.
really, really bad.
Mm.
Abraham Lincoln is another one. Yeah. So that's
Well, they
or is
said
it the difference of maybe two different civilizations and technology coming from?
Well, to
say-
finish that, hang on, to finish
Yeah.
that thought, the Labyrinth Group's objective is to create this blank slate technology, but they also get a lot of technology that from crash sites, relationships with ETs, all that sort of thing. They then dumb it down
They dilute it.
and dilute it to give to the broader ASIO community, which they also then dumb down for the
NSA.
NSA, and which then gets dumbed down to go
And then
to.
but they've got their own, they supply the Cabal, what we call the Cabal, the Illuminati and all that, with the purest state of this technology, which by the time it ends up in the hands of even the military and some of the alphabet agencies, it's been so dumbed down by
It's
it's
been blurred.
fun. But some of these secret organisations have got the closest to the pure state, but apparently the Labyrinth Group have got the purest. They never pass it on in
Yeah.
that state.
They always dumb it down.
Yeah.
And blank slate technology, this time travel, is there. Everything that they do revolves and is connected to this. 15, this guy claims that he was fascinated by time travel as early as being 8 years old, and his whole life, and that's why he got recruited. He was 19 years old. That is the way the story goes. And what's really interesting is I think it's the second interview because I just read it. They talk about the grand portal being the science proving the existence of the soul. And then they refer to it in the literature as LEARN, the light encoded reality matrix. And that when you tap into the light encoded reality matrix is essentially proof that God exists.
That's an awful lot like Lily's terminology of the light creation.
Yeah.
But hang on, just to finish what I was going to say about 15.
Okay.
What was it, which was, the interviewer asked,
Yes.
why not 15
Yeah.
instead of you?
Oh yeah.
And his response was because 15 has been deemed a pawn of the courtier. And that idea that he's just a puppet on a string for the courtier was
Wiped out. of all
totally
the
wiped out,
documents.
not even slightly
Hinted.
hinted at. No innuendo.
And the new stuff.
Yeah.
Hmm.
This guy was revered, and is revered as being super, super intelligent and probably the single most powerful human being on the planet because of the access to the technology he has, the access to the knowledge that he has, his level of intelligence. But it's not just intelligence that gets enhanced; it's your psychic and intuitive abilities as well.
Everything.
Everything. And for that reason alone, he's considered one of the most powerful people. I mean, the guy's as connected as you can get.
Well, he's above he's like the top, he's well above the NSA.
Yeah.
The leader of the Labyrinth Group. What was fascinating, we do all this talk about iTech, and then in the second interview they talk about the training that the Labyrinth Group goes through, that everybody within the Labyrinth Group that goes through this training that has undergone this these upgrades with this pure state technology that Accordion has introduced, that they have the ability to instantly manifest. And they go through an exercise in the second interview where he manifests on the table a ball of yarn, and it goes away, and it comes back, it goes away, and it comes back. So I don't know what the old stuff was compared to the new stuff about that part.
Ooh,
When we all read that, we went, bing!
Well, are you reading the new version of the second interview or the first one?
I don't know. I'm not sure which one it is.
Okay.
But did he manifest it to me, though?
It started with the ball twine, and then it went to $10,000.
Did that disappear too, or did you give that to the
No, he gave that to Sarah so she could work for 3 months and have money to survive and complete her product. That's the way the story goes anyways. I realize it's far-fetched.
This is with all this stuff. You just, nothing frustrates me more is when you just know that shit is manipulated. I just want the real story. Really, just
The real
only
story,
to have been there, fly on the wall.
yeah, always comes in hindsight.
Yeah.
But there's some of what Lily said that also relates to John Lamb Lash. And John Lamb Lash and the Wingmakers as well.
No, you said that Lily had never read any of the Wingmaker stuff.
No.
When we mentioned it on the first interview, she had never even heard of the Wingmaker stuff.
Yeah.
She had a friend email her like 3 days before that with a link to it, which she hadn't looked at.
Yeah.
And
then we bring it up.
we bring it up and she's like, oh, okay, then I've got to go and look at this.
Yeah.
She dove in.
Yeah, it sounds like she really dove in the course of a week. She read quite a bit.
Huh.
But the Wingmakers talk about the fact that the planet, and this is the other part of the discussion that we were having, is in terms of gold. Wingmakers say that the planet was not physical, it was an etheric planet that solidified over time. Right?
Okay.
It became more and more physical, more and more dense, and it was because of its unique core that allowed it to, is densify a word? I guess it is.
Yeah, yeah, I get it.
Over time.
We like to invent words. Go
That
for it.
the Anunnaki came here, made a deal with the Atlanteans,
Yeah.
who may have been 3% at that point, to mine the gold. At the time, they were etheric, the gold was etheric, the planet was etheric. But as the planet started to solidify and densify, as did the gold, it became impossible for these etheric beings to mine a physical
Commodity.
element. So then they have to create these little spacesuits. John Lamb Lash has the same thing, that the planet was etheric. It started to solidify into a water planet. And then came the density of landmass, I think. I'm really reaching back. This isn't the digging development barrel now, but now if, in Lily's terms, they are here to mine or harvest internal creation. What if, in its physical form, internal creation's energy is what we call gold? And then I look at Allfarra. His talk, and it made sense when he read it and he sort of explained it, was that every time you see the word gold referenced in biblical scripture,
Yeah, it's not gold.
it's not physical gold that we've been taught to believe, it's spirit. It's
Energy.
Spirit was, I think, the word he used. And it's all about harvesting gold and the rewards.
I think gold is mentioned 100 and something odd times in the New Testament.
And if it is representing spirit or internal creation or whatever other word,
Okay, this pops in.
yeah,
When we were down in the desert.
yeah.
And we were at that little hotel in Allfarra. And
First one?
The very first, when you guys went off to the market, and I stayed back with Bob,
Oh, where the blue guy turned up.
and we were
Rossani.
talking on the bus.
Rossani, yeah.
It was Rossani, that's right. We were talking on the bus about how we wanted the Tuareg, the blue men of the desert, etc., etc. everyone else gets up and goes out to the souk, the market. We're sitting on the patio of this hotel looking over the street, and this man walks up, dressed in the blue, and immediately introduces himself and starts talking in excellent English. And he starts chatting with us, and it was the feeling out, like you could say, well, you give a little, what are you doing here? Oh, here on a bit of a journey, and you went back and forth feeling each other out of like, how much do they know, etc., etc. And one of the things he said that made my jaw literally hit the floor was that the Tuareg, the blue men in the desert, were partially responsible for the trading of souls for gold. And now he was kind of putting it in terms of the slave trade kind of thing of coming up to the northern point of Africa.
But he used the word souls.
But he said souls. He did not say people for gold. He did not say slaves for gold. He said souls for gold. And at that point, we had just been talking with Heather not 3 or 4 days before about exactly that. That gold isn't about gold, this metal that we wear around as jewelry. It's about spirit. It's about the soul. It's not an element. And this guy said that, and I just let him say.
Also, like people like Zachariah Sitchin and all those others who did that kind of research, who first brought out the idea that the Anunnaki were here in Blind Gold and stuff, said that they needed it for their own sustenance. There was something about it they needed for their own survival. They ate it for their own survival. I mean,
okay, so then
if they can't generate, and they have to. Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, so let's follow this dot. So when you talk about, never mind gold. Let's pretend that gold, the metal, is. Let's go right. Make the hypothetical jump that we're talking about souls, energy, your life force, if you will, eternal essence, even. What we know about the energy harvesting that was done through the monetary systems, religious, political, educational, all of it was about harvesting energy. And then going up, and that goes up through the astral planes to the energy regulators. And that's the whole thing that came crashing down with the filings. Because at that point, it all stops. Guess what? You can't have that energy anymore. It's not allowed. You can't have it. It's all that energy belongs to you, and yours is yours, and mine is mine, to do with as we will.
Okay, let's look at this for a second.
Exactly.
If the filings were essentially started being done in March of 2012.
March of 2012, the big one being done in July 25th of 2012.
If, for however many thousands of years, the final harvest, the fifth harvest, was due
December 25th, 25th.
If they got cut off before that, what does that mean for the December 2012 final harvest? Because
that's an interesting one.
Like, was it usurped?
I'm seeing absolute plan in action here. It's
nothing. I don't think it happened. My personal thing was
something happened.
Something happened, but was it? It's almost kind of like the trap door. You try to do that big harvest, but because everything's been changed, as soon as you go, it's like, and it collapses it. Lily also talked about the fact that the astral realms are now closed. They're locked, shut. Whoever's in whichever level, they're stuck there.
It used to be a two-way street, but now the top's been closed, so when you die, transition, whatever you call it, you can still go into the astral, but there's
no getting out.
The lid's on.
Yeah.
But okay, I haven't thought about that before. I keep talking about that beast vision that I had. So I know
you really need to republish that again, because there's a lot of people who are just coming to this new, who haven't read it or heard it, etc. So maybe you either need to re-explain it or pull it back up so it's fresh, because we keep talking
Oh,
about it.
oh,
And I'm sure there's a whole lot of people going,
this.
what beast fish?
You can tell the story now if you want.
It's not as fresh, but the knowing that I got from it is still there. What I saw was what I would describe as, from a kid's picture book, when you draw a cloud that on a windy day, you see the sort of white cloud, and it's usually got a little mouth in it that's going, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Something like that, except it wasn't solid, it was very smoky. And I knew it was called the Beast. And I also knew that I saw the whole hierarchical structure of creation. And this beast was at the top. And it was in front of Source, or like just there.
Yeah.
So, and it was blocking. And I saw all the dimensions down to 3D. I saw the harvesting system that was implemented on every single one of them. And I saw the filings go in at the bottom in 3D. And I saw the frequency, the energy of the filings. Because this smoky beast up here wasn't blowing, it was inhaling. And it was just in this constant state of sucking. And as it was doing so, it was actually sucking up the energy it was drawing it up, the energy from the filings. And as the filings went through each dimension, the harvesting system that was in place on that dimension just collapsed. And it went up and up and up and up. And this thing was so busy just sucking up, it didn't see it coming. And then the energy went smack, inhaled it, it got caught in its throat, and there was this moment of recognition and absolute shock on its face that it was completely caught off guard. It did not see this coming, and it knew, the words that went through my head was, it's choking on its own creation. And it knew it. And it was just in this state of, holy fuck, it's like it had just been shot and it knew it was dying. I don't know how to explain it.
For all the harvesting beasts out there, let this be a warning to you.
Don't inhale.
I just puffed, but I didn't know.
Yeah, exactly.
I only like the taste of a harvest, I don't swallow.
Okay, get back on topic. This is going to degenerate really quickly.
I don't even know if I can put into words the depth of the knowing that came with the vision. I knew completely, and this was in January, I guess, of 2013, or maybe the first week of February. It was pretty early on in the piece. And I absolutely knew the effectiveness energetically of what those filings did. I can't remember why you brought it up. Why did I bring it up?
Well, I'm going to jump in here with a little comment.
Yeah.
This is some information I was discussing with one of our group at the house to try and explain some of what we've been working on, some of the reasons why various ones of us have done the things that we've done in the past. When sometimes you're involved in something or you're doing something and you don't know why, you just know that you have to keep following it. It's just really, really, really important that you just keep going, no matter what anyone else is saying to you. And I was explaining to him that, in my perspective, something that I had gone through, being involved, of course, with all the RV stuff, all the NASARA stuff, the financial stuff. And I had certain contacts.
All harvesting tools.
Yes, all harvesting tools. Not even a question. I had certain contacts. And it used to drive Nick nuts that I'd be on the phone. Sometimes I'd get phone calls, Skype calls at 3 o'clock in the morning and jump out of bed and run to the computer and blah, blah, blah. He said, oh my God. And I said, there was a point though, that on a conference call, that one of these contacts of mine, who represented him, I'm going to be very vague with details here, I'm sorry, that represented himself as being three-letter agency, and yet I had, through discussion with Heather, we'd already figured out that yes, he was probably agency, but he was not that agency, and he was not here. He was way the hell there, because the information he had, no one else could have had access to. So anyways, all these, like a year and a half of my life poured into this, and on one conference call, he forgot that I was listening on mute. And he was talking to another friend of ours. And someone said something about the OPPT filings and said, are they legit? What's happening with them? And he opened his mouth and he said, we know they're legit. They are working their way through the system right now, but these things take time. But they are absolutely legit, and everyone on the planet knows what they are. And then promptly 5 seconds later went, oh, because he realized that I was on things. I immediately, that was when we were in Tangier, and I went across the road, Heather, guess what my buddy just admitted to finally? And then the same thing later on, where him and my Intel partner, someone I'm really close with, and I got into this huge, big argument where she was mad at me because I'd released an information about the RV being a whole load of bollocks. And she was furious at me, and we got into it, and I started firing him questions, and I was like, really? Is this accurate to say? And I was like, okay, and if this is this, and then this is this, and he fully admitted to everything of what we've been talking about with the UCC filings, how it foreclosed the system, everything. And I said, that whole year of work, year and a half of work, I know now was solely for those 2 5-minute conversations. That was the only reason why I put that year and a half of work in. But when you talk about going through the systems, right?
Oh, that's why, because of the December 2012.
So the December 2012. So it starts here, and like you say, in your vision you saw it enter in down here at the very bottom, and it works its way through the system. So if you can imagine the December 2012 as being, you know, your big beast up here sucking in, and by that time, those filings, no harvest. The second is stroke, there's no harvest happens. And at that point, everything begins to collapse, and it begins to collapse from the top down.
This is why I wanted Lily to define harvesting, and then Lisa jumped at me and said she just did that in the first call. Because there's so many levels to harvesting.
It's okay.
There's the big one, allegedly, and then you have all of these other little minor, you know, but to us they seem major. But then there's, okay, what's the difference between this big humanity harvest and then all of the little tools that are built for harvesting that exist within the system? Because there might not be, December 21st very well may have been the last major harvest, but that hasn't necessarily shut the pipes off on all these little mini harvesting tools that they've implemented all throughout society. So it's like, for me, I asked myself, okay, am I ready? Have I fully allowed myself to let go of the linear time schedule? And because of no other available options, I've been forced to. And then if that's the case, then how open am I to focusing on all of the areas in my own life personally where I'm continuing to feed the beast? Because ultimately people go, oh, you know, I am not going to name any names, but I got an email, I got a message on Facebook the other day by someone whose son was incarcerated for standing up against the system. And she was hysterical. And what would Dee do, and what would Heather do if their kids were in jail? You know, and she's, you know, going through this whole, and it's like, you sit and you go, okay, how willing am I to accept what is in the time schedule? And if that's the case, where am I still consciously or unconsciously continuing to feed this beast? And do I have the courage to start pulling those little plugs out in the areas of my life? Like Sasha said, you know, I said, what advice do you have to people out there that want to make a difference? And the first thing was stop paying taxes. You know, and you could come up with a laundry list of things, you know, that a lot of people are doing consciously and unconsciously, to continue to feed this harvesting beast. And it's like, okay, at what point are you going to have full self-responsibility to start fucking yanking those plugs from the wall?
Well, it's funny because I got a Skype message from someone here who's...
Yes, Pascal, I did say fuck. Sorry, go ahead.
And I got a Skype message from someone who's here in Extra going, oh my God, this article just came out in the news and David Cameron's going to be Prime Minister of Britain, going to do this, he's going to do that, and I said, oh. And I literally opened the Skype message and I took one look at it and I went, close. Because it was such a, the energy sucking vortex of what the original story was. And that person was paying so much energy to it. I was like, I'm not even responding. Because I am not even going to pay any energy into her paying energy to it. I was like, and I just literally closed down. I refused to even read it. I wouldn't look at the news story. I was just like, I am not going there right now. And sometimes that's what it takes, though. It's just that, like, am I going to interact with this? Because the more you interact with it,
okay, what about the argument, and Max Egan brought it up, and in the recent interview with him and in his presentation at Boone, about the whole New Age concept of burying your head in the sand and not paying energy into something and then go away, and it's not going away, and these people in Gaza are being...
Who says that?
Slaughtered, now got supposedly Syria again, is it?
Yeah, Syria again, but I'm going to touch on this in Transpacuous News this week, if I ever get it. We have no proof that any of that's going on.
Well,
like the Syria stuff.
No,
okay.
Gaza, he does.
But even Gaza, we don't.
He does.
Some
he
of
has
it.
people, personal friends of his.
Some of it
who
we do.
there.
And yet, over and over and over for the last 10 years, but the last 3 years especially, the mainstream media has been caught publishing videos from different parts of the freaking world. 5 years earlier. And the guy who took the photos for the Wall Street Journal goes, that's not Syria. I took those photos in Iraq back in 2001. That's Iraq, during the Iraqi war. Like, give me a break. And it went and then all of a sudden, but it happens all the time. So
they've been caught photoshopping and creating crowds of thousands out of a group of 12 people.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, this goes to the same kind of issue of, is it worth it to go on strike? You know, to stand outside the door of the Washington Monument and hold up your picket sign and run around angry and throw eggs. You know, that's a topic of conversation that we could talk about till we're blue in the face.
To me, the whole thing is it comes back to you do what resonates with you. Basically, there are people, for example, we've talked about it with the courtesy notices. We've talked about those who've chosen to stand up in court because they've had this thing of, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to take this fight to the next level. And that is what resonates with them. There are those who are, I'm going to march down, this main street and I'm going to hold a sign because that's what resonates with me to do. And you don't know what their mission is, so to speak. Cat, don't chew my toe. Are they going, the picture of them holding that going to be the one thing that wakes up this person over here, and this person over here is going to do something absolutely spectacular because they're awake? Don't know. All it comes down to is you can only do what is in your heart and do what resonates with you. So if it resonates with you to scream about Gaza, or name any other area of the world where there's an atrocity going on, because Gaza is only one.
But I mean, that's one of the things I thought about when I was listening to Max, actually, was that him inspiring people to act, well, ultimately, because this is the pattern I've seen, will ultimately lead to people taking action and doing some investigation, which will then reveal the hypocrisy and the fraud and that is involved in it.
And they tumble down the rabbit hole, and that's just the first step. Yeah, I agree.
Even if what they think they're going to do initially is write a letter or you know, stand out front somewhere with a placard, if they put enough energy into it, they'll end up falling down the rabbit hole, and much will be exposed. You are incredible.
Someone is in a real piss and vinegar mood. Pixel, behave. Go walk through a wall.
Hey, keep feisty.
Off you go. And she's like hanging on the back of the chair. No. Well, that's the one thing I keep coming back to is you can't tell anyone what to do. You can't tell anyone what not to do.
No.
They do what's in their heart, and they may not understand it in the moment. Like kind of like what I was saying, but a year and a half spent doing something. You don't know what the outcome is. The outcome could be absolutely nothing as what you could have possibly have foreseen it to be. Maybe it is to wake up one single person, to say the right word to the right person that causes a massive change, chain reaction, doesn't matter.
Well, I mean, for me, it's like, you know, we have this wide range of choices available at every time. You know, you take the Albert Einstein quote, one of my favorites. He says, the world is not a dangerous place to live because of the people who are evil, but because of those who won't do anything about it. And it's like, okay, you use that as an example, and you say, you know, that quote is what drives us to do the work that we do. You know, for me personally, I'm doing something about it by letting my voice be heard and sharing my ideas in a public forum to be listened to on the radio for whoever is interested, right? And it's like you use the court system as an example. You know, you can go and you can fight in court, and you can stand up for your rights against that judge, and you can show them that you know your rights and you mean business, or you don't show up in court and you don't subject yourself to
Their system.
Yeah, to their system at all. Which is the right or which is the wrong way? The one could be, they both could be extremely effective depending on which way you decide to look at it.
Yeah.
Right.
And which day of the week it is, and what judge you happen
It's like for me personally, after I read what was
You
her
could
name's
get
book?
equally screwed.
You could get, yeah, absolutely. After reading what's her name's book, the How I Took Down Every Bureaucratic, Mary Croft's book, it inspired me. Okay, wow, what I really need to do at this point is I need to learn my rights, and then that way I can, you know, next time I get pulled over, next time I'm in a situation where the police show up at my door, I know how to defend myself. And while I do think that that's extremely important to be able to understand, know your rights, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to use that level of understanding and try to go to challenge the Supreme Court as an example, you know? So, but I think these are the kind of daily occurrences that are continuing to challenge people. You know, even here in Ashton, when things come up, you know, it's people trying to figure out what is the best, what's the highest way that I can approach the situation that will provide the most good from my perception, based on my level of experience. And there's no right or wrong way, and there's no one answer that trumps the rest, you know, and that makes it challenging while we're still continuing to try to navigate all of this war and all of this poverty and all of this bloodshed and all of this, you know, deception and manipulation and greed and all those fancy keys.
You know, there's been a few people over the last couple of years that I've interviewed or that have been on shows or whatever that have talked about from December 2012 to around 2017 was going to get really ugly. And that it's kind of like cleaning out the dregs from the bottom of the glass.
Exactly.
They've got to rise up to the surface. You know, the more clear water you pour in, all that shit gets stirred up. It's going to take a while for that to
But
be
there's been a
cleansed.
couple of messages that have come out in the last week and a half. They've talked about exactly that, of like, because those frequencies are no longer viable, those negative frequencies, etc., they're just coming to the surface so that everyone can see them. Well, that means
They're going to wave at us on the way out.
they've got to be seen. They're being seen. Whether it's, you know, the financial collapse, whether it's what the truth in banking, whether it's the political bullshit, whether it's Gaza, Syria, Iraq, Argentina, Venezuela, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's still be coming out, and that's what we're seeing right. I mean, that really is what we're seeing right now.
Well, I don't think there's been a single
last
incident.
year.
Yeah.
It's like a fire trying to burn when you suck the oxygen out of the room.
Yeah, exactly.
There's been so many domestic shootings in America over the last 2-3 years.
Yeah.
I don't think there's been a single one that hasn't been outed.
It's all over the place.
And
I
sometimes
mean, all the way back to
within
Timothy
hours.
Bay and all that shit. It goes back like JFK, you know, shooting all of these, you know, Lincoln, the way that he.
Yeah, but now they're happening in hours.
And they're having
Because
it at the moment. Okay,
Yeah.
here's the prime one. And again, I'm going to talk about this one in Transpacific News because it is funny. Scotland's vote for independence happened a week and a half ago. And this has been geared up. All the news has been talking about this, and people don't get it. It's actually, it's not just a lot of people in North America, especially, are kind of like, who cares? Scotland, England. No, it has actually huge relevance to a lot of shit going on financially right now. So you have the vote start. So they open the polls at like, I think it was like 8 o'clock in the morning. They opened the polls on that Thursday, and the polls went till I think 8 or 9 o'clock that night. Within hours of the polls opening, there were YouTube videos showing
how the whole thing
fixing. There were reports coming out from everywhere. People. There was a picture where in Dundee, Scotland, which was one of the biggest towns that was a yes town. We are going to separate. They knew this was one of the towns they were going to have the biggest problem with. There was a picture that was in the mainstream media showing a table with a stacks of ballots on it. And the front of the table has a sign that says no, and there's a ballot sitting right on the top that says yes. And that was out, published, before they'd even finished counting the ballots. So the same thing, it's just boom. It's being seen, people are poking the holes in it. The Boston Marathon ridiculousness.
Oh, yeah, that
2 hours, it was just, they'd already tracked down what actors had been used. There was video footage, people had put the video footage.
Sandy Hook.
Oh, did you hear?
Batman.
I mean,
Yeah.
Dallas Goldbug cracks me up. He absolutely cracks me up. When he first hit the scene, however many years ago,
Dallas who?
Dallas Goldbug.
I don't know the name.
Do you not know the name?
No.
He's the guy who started by outing a lot of these crisis actors and identifying that this person is also playing this person.
Yeah,
right?
I've seen that.
And he was doing some pretty solid work at first. And obviously to, you know, earn some trust and,
Yeah.
you know, garner a reputation, which he did. And then it all started to go a little bit sideways. And Jodie Foster was the Prime Minister of Australia.
Yes.
And apparently now, I've just found out, or I found out via Max when I was at Boo, I'm Max Egan's daughter. Max Egan is actually Max Egan's actually the Earl of somewhere. And Santos Bonacci is also his son and my brother.
That's going to be some family reunion.
Oh my God, that's messy.
Oh, that is just too funny.
But he's the work, if you go back to the kind of stuff that he did early on, it was brilliant work. I mean, and a lot of people have picked up the ball where he dropped it, because he really did drop it and I lost the plot. But
Yes, but in cases like that, 99.9% of the time, he's been pulled off and been like, yeah, guess what, you're now going to make a mess of things because that'll discredit all the earlier work that you did.
Was he the guy that found the photos from Sandy Hook and linked it to the same people that were playing in Boston Bombing, and he showed, look, this guy?
he probably was a part of all of that, but there was a few people who did that.
Yeah,
there was also someone who did an incredible job of looking at all of the victims from the planes on 9/11, not the ones who from the building, because some people did genuinely throw themselves out of those buildings and die, but the ones who were apparently in the planes, and found them on Facebook. People's identities have been hijacked from Facebook. So for example, here's Lisa Harrison on Facebook, this is my profile picture, and I've got this grey chair behind me and I'm wearing this. And my name's Lisa. The victim on the plane, his name is D,
She just happens to look exactly like this, be sitting on a green chair, and her shirt is blue. But it's the same photo.
Yeah.
And it was just so many people's identities were just stolen. And the same, even with the hijackers. Their identities were stolen. They're putting photos out of people and with their names saying this was one of the hijackers, and there's a guy in Israel going, no, that's me. I'm over here.
Yeah.
I'm alive and well. Something like,
Who's the charger for Lisa's computers?
I don't know, 5 of those apparent 11 hijackers are alive and well.
Well, so they went through, and I didn't track it down too far because the whole Malaysian Airlines thing was just,
Oh yeah.
but there was the whole same type of thing there where you had, oh, we saw this guy had a false passport and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, really? And not a week later, the guy's like, hello, I'm still here. Hello, I'm over here.
Are you taking callers?
Oh, yes, would you like to call in?
I'd like to call in, may I?
Absolutely.
Please,
I just
please.
want to add, I'll just come near the microphone.
Hold on, we
Nice
got
to hear from Blue.
Hello, everyone. What this is bringing up for me is that we've already identified the choice to either take on the system, go down that path or not, which is something we've done for eons, and it's actually just a vicious cycle. But what comes up for me is to go further down the rabbit hole of the embodiment of I am. And especially on the tail of talking about the gold as our internal source and potentially our internal soul. That's where I feel the investigation is inviting me at this time, because right now, if I tap into the collective experience and consciousness of the people, we are needing something that is going to keep us strong, that is going to be a reason for our courage.
If you can put it into words, what does investigating or going down the rabbit hole of the I am mean?
Yeah.
Okay, I think it's simultaneous to what's the investigation of ITAC.
How does it work?
Okay, and I think we are now venturing into the realm of the unspeakable, yet we all share pointers. But we're going into soul exists. How do we know that? How do we prove that? And the Wingmakers is suggesting that until we recognize soul scientifically, all right, and recognize that the multidimensionality aspect has to enter the 4 quarters of power, right? The religion, philosophy, science, and culture. That investigation now, we have got to unveil the communication that is translating and transmitting collective consciousness. We have to talk about the unspeakable in a new way. So for me, it's going down the path of self-awareness, knowing ourselves molecularly, identifying and understanding how the energetics of the universe are coming into our physical being, how our emotional state is being affected by the impulses and the transmissions that all of us are experiencing right now in this room. So we are going into what we would call psychic realm, our psychic selves, sensations, perhaps more of our imagination. Not that you just heal yourself when you think of your body as healthy, but now you're thinking of your body as the electromagnetic charges that are moving through your expanding brain, that are setting off light orbs that are now recycling into your body, going into your marrow, having a conversation and communication with your blood cells, and then transmitting it to the whole medical industry of our planet. Those would be my suggested areas of investigation.
See, it's really funny because Moosh and I had this conversation last night about healing and energetic healing, and Moosh is one of my oldest friends on the planet, and we studied Reiki together. We did our first 2 levels of Reiki together, and blah, 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 blah. And both of us separate came to our whole thing of like, you know what, I don't like these systems, and I don't like, you have to do it this way, and it must be done like this, or whether it's I did therapeutic touch, I studied Reiki, I did all of them. And we both said, we come to the same thing. I don't need to know it works, how it works. I don't need to know what it is even going to do. All I need to do is say, here, take this. Do with it as you need, because your body already knows what it needs. So I don't need to know the finer details. And all I need to know is know that this is what you need, and I'm just going to give it to you. And on you go. And that's it. The intent is there. It doesn't matter. What your body does to heal itself, whether it's rebuilding cartilage or whether it's patching an energetic hole somewhere, it doesn't matter. Just the intent is just taken, and there it is.
That's one of the things I really liked about the practice of what's called quantum touch.
Yeah.
Is because all you're doing is what they call sweeping love. You're drawing it up from your toes to your head, and then down your arms, out your hands, and you just breathe and sweep. And it's
Sounds like Lumi.
yeah, it's just all love. And all you do is just pump that out without any limit or expectation.
No limits, no expectations.
How it's used. And I actually kind of learned the hard way once trying to heal somebody and be really, really definite about what it was I was intending.
Specific.
I was being really specific about where this energy was going to go and what it was going to do. And I think I did more harm than good because I wasn't consciously aware of, symptoms have a way of dominoing effect, and your body has its own process of healing. And what might look like something going wrong can actually be something going right.
Yeah.
You work on that and suppress that, and everything that's built up underneath it has a problem. Instead of letting go of all of that and just allowing the receiver to absolutely utilise the way
to trust
yes.
that the receiver's system will know what to do with it. No, so I don't need to tell you what to do with it. I trust that you know what to do with that, and on you go.
Well, I think this is the next evolution of the collective imagination, is that we begin to enthuse the consciousness with more vocabulary that identifies that these energetics are in fact present now, and that if we follow that trail to the soul being gold, which I firmly believe in myself, all right, maybe believe isn't the word, but I fully embody in myself that I am the gold. And it makes more sense to me to start thinking now that, perhaps that's what is meant by the golden ages, is that we start recognizing we have the resource that everything in the infinite universe has been trying to harvest. And as soon as we turn our awareness and attention to it, we enthuse it. And I would venture to guess that anyone listening, including ourselves, if we take a moment to just tune in, the energetics of this environment, this conversation, has escalated. That's significant. Now, if everything's energy, then I communicate to anyone and everyone listening to this that in this very moment, doesn't matter if you listen to it now or in a week, you are being enthused and enhanced with a more brilliant consciousness than anything that's going out on the media news.
I mean, that's really why people listen to the shows. They don't know why, but after, for whatever reason, they feel expanded.
Oh, we've been saying for the last nearly 2 years now, the goal is within, the value is within. Everything else is simply a representation of that. And I guess I'm understanding that in light of all this now, in a whole new way, to a much deeper level, to the point where it may in fact be literal, and whether it's, I don't know.
I sent an article this week. buddy Daniel in the Skype room. My one Skype room sent me an article. Oh, I'm gonna have to pull it up. He sent it to me. I was having internet issues. I managed to get part of the article loaded up, and it was to do with the body transmutating gold within.
Well, hang on, there's another part of it too. There's, I went on an alchemy rant once, where I looked into a lot of information about alchemy and the philosopher's stone and all the founding views. And all
I've been there too.
And one of the things I learned, but I haven't been able to really substantiate, was that according to some of the material, the minerals in the earth are all one and the same thing. They're just in different stages of development. So what we consider coal and minus coal, say it starts off as coal, given long enough time, becomes
Diamond?
eventually, well, gold.
Yeah.
The gold was the pinnacle.
Mm-hmm.
And whether if you're mining silver, you're simply mining it at a particular age or a particular spot in its own development. That if you leave it in the ground long enough, it becomes gold. Everything is evolving. Everything evolves to gold if left alone long enough.
Well, that's an interesting theory.
Yeah. You throw that in there in the mix as well.
Well, I'll try and find the link. And
So
I'll
yeah,
toss
what
it
did you
over
say?
to you.
Body transmutes gold?
Oh God, like I said, I could just barely had time to glance at the page before everything, the whole internet collapsed. There's nothing left. It was basically that the body internally transmutes gold. So, like I said, I haven't had a chance to reload it. I'd actually forgotten about the link until just now, and I'll go back and I'll find it. Daniel, if you're listening, send me that link again.
Well, there are people who drink the gold.
Monotonic
Yeah,
gold.
in monatomic gold, monatomic silver.
Ionic.
Ionic, yep, absolutely.
And what's that stuff? The white powdered gold? What's that?
Ormus.
Ormus?
That is monatomic.
That's monatomic?
So if we go back to the gold already exists within us, and we start to turn our awareness and attention to that, then I would venture to guess that iTech would probably lead us to the understanding of how we take that gold, or it becomes a new density of form.
Okay, well, how about we look at it in the flip side of that, though, and we say, if gold at one point was not in density, and the gold is within us, that it has nothing to do with gold metal, it has to do with its original form, if it is within us. Which is kind of the joke about the whole financial system supposedly going to be going Basel III and be based on gold. Right?
That's just saying it's based on us all over again, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's based on us as the...
Transparency!
As the
there you
Right.
go.
And there we are, we're the alchemists.
Yeah.
So I think you're onto something. I think I don't know, this is purely based on my feeling in this moment, but the gold may well be the key to the iTech.
Yeah, I don't have any of that.
iTech or feeling?
Gold.
Yeah, you do.
You got a soul, don't you?
What was that?
You have a soul, don't you?
It's a conductor, right?
Yes?
Yep.
What a nice affirmation. It's like we can look at each other and go, you're golden. This is golden. This is a golden moment.
Yeah, golden moment.
They don't call it the golden age for nothing,
TV.
I suppose.
Oh, who was it? Who talks about in the ages? Is it the ancient? Is it the Asians? Yeah, they talk about they put them in the bronze, iron,
Yeah, it is just Bronze Age, yeah.
and then the last one is the golden age.
And that's the evolution.
Yeah, which well, it's a oh my god, it's Asian, right?
No, I mean, it's been used to denote historical times because
No,
it's
when
the
they
base
talk
metals.
about these specific ages that we're going to go through,
Yeah.
just like prophecy, just
Yeah.
like you know, and the last one is the Asian, the golden age. They
Well, you know
don't
that
remember.
there's a whole Bible prophecy that has the inverse of that, where it goes to the end is an iron and clay and starts at the golden, but that the golden's supposed to be Babylon. So they inverted that too.
Oh, you mean something's on something backwards?
Yeah.
Can't imagine.
Can't imagine.
You wouldn't do such a thing.
So in a way, we've actually identified a theme of iTech, and that would be the exploration of gold imagination, venturing and exploring. How far can we go with our imaginative selves with the essence of gold?
Okay, so why not just chuck the word gold out of the equation, because it confuses too many people, and just say what it is. So, I am.
Mm-hmm.
So then take the stories that you keep hearing about the Anunnaki coming, mining all the gold.
But I think it's
do it to
significant.
yellow metal that people wear for rings.
Mm-hmm.
They were mining the gold. They were the harvesting of the souls, the harvesting of the energy.
Well, if all those stories are exactly the same as the way Alpha interprets them from the Bible, then what they are both essentially saying is this is all about spirit.
Exactly.
This is
Mm-hmm.
all about
It is
the
all
harvest
about
of
spirit. That's what I'm saying. But whenever you throw the word gold in, because it confuses people. Gold, if you use the word gold, it gives validity to the financial system, it gives validity to trade and commerce, it gives validity to I have some, you have none, and you
External
have
value.
more. External value. Here's this physical
Focus on the external
thing.
rather
Look,
than
it's even
internal.
gold.
Yeah.
Here's this physical thing, and this has got value, and everyone watch the shiny package. Don't look at where that value actually is from. Right?
My sense is it's significant to use that word right now. Because it's been so limited in the hands of the mainstream, we've only seen it as something that could be of benefit to us. Something, I don't know, it's just the sense I'm having is that it is significant to reclaim it. Yeah, that particular word. I don't think that's a harmful word or has negative association in any way, but it's just like reclaiming I am. Now that term has been around for a long while, so not everyone even wants to adopt that.
Yeah.
But put it in association with gold, and that might be part of the transitional model of the old paradigm actually tapping into soul.
You know, we could start a new Facebook meme, like we did with the whole I am free thing, and do I am gold.
Mm-hmm.
And just see what people come up with and what they create for I am gold. And it's
I don't have that much gold body makeup. We may have to go and buy some more. Gold finger.
Gold finger.
Who's got the mic?
And a dirty foot.
There's some things hanging off it. Seriously, check.
Very dirty foot. Okay, I honestly do feel like there's something in that in relation to the iTech though. And I don't know what yet. I'm going to
So if anyone has some thoughts
that
they
right
want to chuck into the chat room, any thoughts on this?
I think they've given up on
Please
this live, to be honest.
I know.
They keep dropping.
Can I interject a thought?
On you go.
Absolutely.
Oh, when I was in college taking my chemistry course, I had an older professor who was kind of the avant-garde as far as his thoughts on quantum stuff. And he's kind of just chucked to the side because he was actually ahead of his time. And he told us in class one day that there's a quantum thing that happens sometimes with elements. Like there's a little electron spins around and sometimes it goes into the middle and hits a proton and turns it into a neutron. And they call that K capture. K capture. And this event that happens. And he said what they found is that when they dissect a human heart after someone dies, there's this isotope of potassium that forms that's not in the diet. And they think that what happens is the body takes calcium, the calcium atom, in the heart, and performs this quantum transmutation and converts it to potassium. And he said his theory was that the heart is actually nuclear power, and that's why it's so strong, and it has so much energy. And he says this potassium collects in the heart over a lifetime. It doesn't take much, but it's occurring at a really low level. But it supplies that kick of energy for each beat.
The potassium does?
This conversion from calcium to potassium.
From calcium to potassium. Well, isn't that kind of transmutation right there?
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
I've not heard much about that since, but you can look up K-capture online, and it does happen.
But it's it's hard to say. An anomaly?
No, it happens with everybody.
Yeah.
No, this you made it sound like this K capture thing is some random.
Outside of a biological process, it doesn't happen very often.
But inside a biological process, it could be a regular process. And it's just something. I had a conversation with
Reminds me of
kids
the
this
God
morning.
particle for some reason.
Well, the what particle? The problem that we run into continuously, we had a huge conversation with all the kids in the house this morning because someone brought up something to do with science, and that Dani pulled out her soapbox and stood up on it and went into it.
It doesn't sound like something you would do.
I know. I was feeling weird this morning. Too much sleep last night, I guess. And we got into the conversation about how when science is controlled, whether it's through, three-letter agencies or through ego or through just historical ineptitude, then certain avenues never get looked at. So for example, this what Bill was just talking about, I've never heard of this.
No.
Okay, but is it because it's one of those things of it's never been seen? They can't prove it. They can't watch it happening in real motion and say, oh, look at that, it just transmuted that one into this one, and therefore we have this theory. And that's kind of what we're running into all the time now in science,
Well,
in the quantum stuff, etc. Is they know that they know it works.
They don't want us to pay
But-
any attention to what's going on in quantum physics. Exactly. Because it's too controlled by consciousness, and it's too, the consciousness plays too big a variable for them to want to, there's a reason why science spotlights all this shit that, yeah, it might seem high-tech, it might seem, state-of-the-art or the next new discovery, but they're just like everything else, shoving in a sack all the things they don't want us to focus on. Quantum physics being one of those.
Oh, yeah. Okay, getting back to the Wingmakers for a second, they say that it's the scientific proof of the existence of the soul, right?
Mm-hmm.
It changes things. But, excuse me, I haven't eaten. That's why I'm doing that. Why? What does that fundamentally do to the collective? Because I honestly think that if you asked pretty much most people,
They would say they believe
they would
they
say
have a
they
soul.
believe in the existence of the soul.
Okay.
Do they need it to be validated by science?
Maybe, just, maybe they do, just in order to shut people up, the disbelievers, I don't know.
I think with that, I think what they're saying is that the dogmatic approach on all the myriads of levels and forms, it will come toppling down as a result of the scientific discovery, because you take the dogma out of it, and all of a sudden what you're left with is something completely different.
Not the religious ideology, the religious ideology, let's take Christianity. You're a body that has a soul, and if you're a good girl, you're going to go to heaven, and if you're a bad girl, you're going to go to hell, and wherever it is you end up, that's where you're staying. There isn't another, path, another jaunt around the planet for you, that's where it is. Buddhism, many of those ones, they have, you deal with reincarnation, well the soul does this, but the soul goes through this process and then has to go through this process like this, and this. So all the versions of what most people think of as soul are tainted by religion, by social norms, etc.
Proof
So
of
what's
its existence doesn't change how people can twist and talk and change it.
unless proof of his existence comes in a form that invalidates those belief structures.
That's what they talk about in the material. They talk about that as being the element that makes it so revolutionary, so
Exactly.
groundbreaking.
Because once we establish it as a science, that immediately vanishes limitations. And of course, the trail right behind it is we each become more self-empowered in knowing our infinite beingness. And now we've opened to the galactic families and perhaps our origins.
Well,
Yeah.
even on the level of,
Takes equality to one level too.
Lily talked about soul harvesting at death, right? And Billy, you and I had this conversation a couple of days ago about karma and all of this. So, if you have a huge belief structure, we are creator beings. We create what we believe. So if you have this huge belief structure that you are stuck in a karmic debt wheel, that you are going to go to heaven or hell, vice versa, then when you transition out of the physical body that you have at this moment, you actually can create that reality which you're believing in, right? So, and your soul takes on those aspects and is harvested, etc.
Here's an example. You know those, I see dead people, can't remember their names. There's a couple of...
Sixth Sense is Bruce Willis style movie?
No, not the movie. There's two guys that I'm thinking of in particular. And they go, they have big auditoriums and they walk.
Van Praagh. And what's that?
Van Praagh and John Edwards?
John Edward.
Yeah.
In the same session, you can pick somebody from the audience who's Jewish. And your father died, and he's telling you to stick with your principles, stick with your practice, stick with your spirituality, stick with the Jewish church, blah blah blah. Next person who speaks to is a Christian. Mum was a die-hard Christian.
Yeah, it says.
Mum says,
Make sure you go to church on Sunday. Yep.
They get validation for their beliefs. I honestly do believe he is speaking to the spirit of these people, because there are things he just couldn't possibly know.
Yeah.
That only that person knew. And so he's getting that information from some aspect of that individual. So is that exactly what we're doing? Are we literally going to the next realm, dimension, aspect, reality, with every single belief intact? And which is why I think the whole New Age, white light, reincarnation, rinse and repeat cycle has been so effective and damaging, because that we expect to see our dead relatives and dead pets and the guy we knew when we were 6 and all that stuff when we in the white light and go down the tunnel and all. Who doesn't expect that now? How many people have not come across a near-death experience story?
Pearly Gates.
Where they've been told that's how it goes. And I think the whole thing's a big trap.
Okay, let's go back to Lily.
I didn't see any relatives in my near-death experience.
Well, one of my first jobs, I worked for a guy who used to be a pastor, a minister. And he went to Vietnam as the minister. He had a near-death experience of his own. He left the church as a result. Walked away from the whole thing. He said there was nothing but a big black empty void.
Sounds familiar.
Terrifying. He said it was the most terrifying experience.
But if you create that experience, so I'm going to go back again, what Lily Earth talked about. And she said there was those who are, with the 85%, who are stuck in they are the ones who are stuck in that wheel of they're just being continuously harvested from birth till death and over and over and over. Well, it becomes a self-perpetuating loop. If you can create whatever it is that you're going into and you're mindlessly believing what you're being told, be it through religion, through society, etc., then they create their own loop. That loop is just created, and it's not until you jump off of, however that works, that you are able to, you know, break the cycle, etc.
Mhm.
But isn't that just, that's kind of what Lilith, that's what I get, is that's what Lilith was talking about, in that 85%. So if you talk about that, the John Edwards stuff where he says, well, you know, your dad says be a good, you know, follow this religion, your mom says blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
If they're part of the 85% who are in that cycle of just recycle, 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 be harvested, recycle.
Maybe this is why Christians are so adamant that the reincarnation cycle is not real. Because they truly believe, you know, when you're done, you're done. You know, that's it. You're going to heaven, you're going to hell, and wherever you end up, you're stuck there for eternity. I remember reading the book Autobiography of a Yogi, the Paramahansa Yogananda, self-published, self-written, the story of his journey into becoming a yogi. And toward the end of it, that was one of the books that really woke me up. And toward the end of it, he talked about his guru passing over and coming back in density. And he tells about this experience in a hotel room somewhere in India, and him telling him now what his role is, which was to be a gatekeeper in the astral. And he was there to take people kind of on the astral journey when they cross over, to kind of, okay, you know, here's where you're going to go to kind of traverse where you've been and see your big life flash before your eyes scenario, and then, you know, then you're going to go over here and you're going to start to recreate your new soul contract for the next reincarnation. And it's like, you know, that was a fascinating read to me at the time, because at the time I had no concept or context of the astral realm. I had never even heard of it before. So now all of a sudden I'm being guided on this journey of what happens when you die, and only to find out that the astral realm is such a big part of the wheel of deception that keeps us in this constant flow of being harvested. And it's like, how do I reconcile that, you know?
Well, in order to keep the wheel turning, you would have to control from the perceived other side just as much as you control it from here. Like, if you were literally, if you were to, you know, drop dead this moment and your soul becomes free, you still would need to control that soul to continue it on the cycle of harvesting. So it makes sense that it's, you know.
Hence Daniel Brinkley.
I mean, talk about a depressing subject matter, right? You live this whole life where you're harvested, and you live in this illusion, and then you die, and then you just sign up for another round.
Well, that requires the belief that you're less than all that is.
Yeah, what?
That you're less than all that is.
Exactly.
Because you have to believe you're less than in order to climb this ladder.
Go through, work your way through the levels, do your time at each level, pass your test, go to the next level.
That's what bothers me when I read like about the new financial systems. You keep talking about meritocracy. Well, that's a term that merit is something you see in the Buddhist religion. You earn merit by doing good deeds or whatever. And this meritocracy, what do they mean?
The next rung.
Yeah. What do they mean by this? Who decides what the merit is?
Do you think Jacques Fresco's resource-based economy has elements of that meritocracy?
I haven't read his stuff. What can you explain what he has in mind?
You're probably better at explaining
The Jacques stuff?
a resource-based economy.
It's basically society that functions around. It's like a bartering system based on what's needed, using, you know, resources like, as an example, grain. You know, that you're in this. I haven't researched Jacques stuff since, gosh.
My opinion is
So it's a question that came up a lot when we were talking about getting rid of money.
But barter is money, and it's just it's a way to hide that an exchange. To me, it ignores the issue of where value comes from, and the world has already gone through the barter stage and evolved something more complex because it wasn't fungible enough for transportation and you know, I mean, like gold. You carry a gold bar with you. How do you divide it up? Do you get a hacksaw? Do you know what size coins? You know, this is just the issue you get into with.
Well, the representations have become more and more
They're so abstract now that nobody can even figure out what they are.
I mean, now they're just numbers on the screen that may or may not exist, and they're in our heads.
And a lot of it's based on derivatives, which are mathematical calculations on risks that you can't even comprehend. I mean, most of us didn't even have the mathematics to even comprehend.
Complex algorithms with the purpose of keeping society confused.
Exactly, to hide the theft. You know, if you baffle them with BS score, keep it non-transparent. Because the moment you recognize that value comes from the individual and from source, how do you justify harvesting it?
But this has got me on a little tangent now. What if, we started with literally bartering physical things. I carved a bowl out of this wood, and I'm going to exchange it for this spice. Then we move on to more elaborate. We've used sticks to represent. In the past, we've used
counting sticks.
Yeah.
Beads.
On a cord.
Beads are beads are one of the oldest forms of currency, no?
Well, we've gone from that kind of literal swap, person-to-person swap, which limits the bartering, because I can't get to him.
Right.
But I can get to you. So I'm stuck with whatever you've got going on.
Right.
Value's always going to be subjective anyways.
It always is. Water's worth a hell of a lot more to someone in the desert than it is to someone living on the Great Lakes in Canada.
But what I'm saying is these representations have become more and more energetic and etheric, to the point where now they're just kind of ideas, almost, right? What if, and I do believe this is all by design.
Oh, absolutely.
But now what if, like we talked about beginning of last year, with these thumbprint things and all of that,
yeah,
the way actually the design was to get to a point where we literally plugged into each other and we literally exchanged.
Well,
this gold, this eternal essence, this I am, and this internal creation, whatever the hell you want to call it. And they could, because there would be, you can imagine there would be the equivalent of like ATMs and things that we would have to plug into to do anything. And it would literally be just extracting and harvesting directly from the source.
Okay, well, there was the movie we sat down and watched. We've had a movie-horrific summer, actually. Well, a lot of new movies.
You just make
like,
it work?
Yes, of course I did. I always make
movie-horrific.
Movie-horrific summer, yeah, exactly. So, and we've looked at a lot of the new movies that have come out, with like Lucy and things like that. But then some of the older ones, for example, we watched, you were there, Brian, we watched In Time. And that's kind of, right?
Oh, of course,
they've got,
exactly.
right? They've got the digital thing here that tells them how much time they've got left, and when they exchange, it's like, okay, here you go, I'll give you a half hour, there you go.
But it's not, well, what I'm talking about is it's
no, but that's
physical.
but that's what I'm saying. When you talk about now, is that a kind of talk about the hint that what could be, in the fact of like, let's say, okay, I'm going to give you this. Yeah, you've got it.
And these devices are literally sucking out our life force.
We have a very anxious caller on our hands. Caller?
Caller number one, yes?
I'm back! Okay, this to me dovetails on the heels of expanding the concept of collective imagination. Because we already know the gold exists. We already know we're here. And I think where the exchange in value is going to happen is how brilliant is your imagination.
Yeah.
All right? So if I sit here and you trust me, you just have a resonant affinity with where I would guide you. And I start to put out and share a visualization that we are following these very fine gold threads out into the infinite universe. And everything and anything that witnesses that sends the most incredible vibration of love and embrace. right? I just took you on a journey, if you trust me, right? But look at the value of that. Look at how expansive that energetic is. And I think that's the language. That's the I-tech language that's going to emerge. That's why we keep saying, you know, don't watch TV. Shut the media off. Stop feeding yourselves what doesn't work. Now, what out there does work that isn't offering a structure, because the embodiment of I am is right here now. So there is no guideline. There's not going to be an asset or like a barter system.
Well, this is one of the reasons I actually really love being around all the kids running around the clubhouse, is because I pay attention to what they're saying now, especially the younger, the little ones. And it puts me back into an environment where I feel more nurtured to consider the value of my own imagination, because society wants to indoctrinate children to not be daydreamers. Yep. Stop daydreaming. You know, basically flip the switch on your imagination off. You got school to focus.
And here's a video game. Play this video game for 5 hours a day, because we're going to take all your imagination away from you. And it's you're just going to follow what this game tells you to play.
It's almost like as adults, the older you get, the more indoctrinated by the system we as adults get, the more we even forget, okay, what does it even look like for me to be more imaginative? And then all of the greatest ideas ever, it all came as a result of tapping into our imagination.
Well, even if you look at technology, you see that trend, because things like 3D printers, you don't need a factory with zillions of people to create something. It's the imagination that goes into the design, the art of it. And so we're moving to this time where it's not the distribution, it's not even the manufacturing that generates the value. It's the person who has this beautiful imagination to create this device, this art, this jewelry, this whatever it is. And in that, up until this time, an artist was always underpaid because he couldn't manufacture enough of them, you know, or he had to own a factory to, you know, if he comes up with a teapot or something, it's beautiful. Well, who's gonna make the machines that stamp the metal and weld it and all this kind of thing? But if you can 3D print something, this person all of a sudden has this beautiful gift to humanity, and it can be replicated as much as people need it, you know. And people will pay for that idea.
I think the whole idea of a struggling artist too was one of those things that was deliberately seeded into the collective in order to discourage people from pursuing imaginative and creative.
You don't want to be a poet. Oh, you want to be a poet? Don't be ridiculous.
There's no money in that.
There's no money in that.
My first programming job, I got my first interview when the guy asked me, "What are your hobbies?" I didn't really know what he wanted because I thought he wanted some sort of techie answer. And I told him, I write poetry. Because that's what I was waiting to hear. He says, everybody in this ID department is either an artist, a musician, a poet, or some other creative aspect.
They're looking for that.
They're looking for the affinity
for imagination.
He says, programmers are creative people. He says, that's why they're so hard to manage. And he says, and people they think they're accountants. They're not. And you know, so that. Those traits in people, so that wellspring of creativity, you know, whether it's words or it's music or it's, you know,
visual.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, guys, we've done this for 2 hours now, so we will get the recording to this out. I don't know how the audio's. I don't know what the result's going to be on the audio for this straight away, but we'll get the video up as soon as we can. My job's still trying to get last week's video up.
Yeah.
We'll see.
This is going to change, though. This is going to change.
Well,
because
maybe
I
we should
said this, so that.
No. Okay. We'll hold off. All right. Thank you. See you next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Much love from Morocco.
Broadcasting a new paradigm on the One Network.